Saturn, the great disciplinarian, Kronos, father time, arbiter of karma, stationed to go retrograde in Aries Saturday, July 12th, where he will be appearing to travel backwards from the vantage point of planet Earth in Aries through September 1st, and then he will move into Pisces and continue retrograde until November 27th. Hello, my name is Eliane-Nicole. I'm your astrologer and tarot reader, and in this video, I'm going to focus on the Saturn retrograde in Aries portion of its retrograde. Although I will touch on Pisces, I'm going to talk about who this transit will affect the most personally, which signs the transit will affect the most personally, as well as some of how this might present on the collective level. And I'm going to talk about the major aspects and the dates where Saturn is making these aspects. So get out your calendar and take notes so you can remember these important dates. But before I get to the translation, I want to say, if you're watching this on Instagram, I'm just posting the first 3 minutes here. The entire video will be available on my YouTube channel, Eliane-Nicole. My YouTube channel is my name, Eliane-Nicole. Please find me there. If you, there will be a link in the profile bio of my Instagram to get to my YouTube channel. There's also a link in the profile bio of my Instagram to book a reading with me at my website, Eliane-Nicole.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel. Please hit the notification bell so you're notified every time I post a new video. Please like, please comment, please share. It helps me in the algorithm, grow my business, and grow my community. It puts me in a position to continue to give these free astrological offerings. If you are watching this on Instagram, please make sure you're following astrology.tarot.Eliane-Nicole. Please like, please comment, please share. Free for you, very helpful to me. And now, without further ado, I'm going to get into the translation of Saturn retrograde in Aries. And it's stationing at 1 degree, 56 minutes, so almost 2 degrees. So anyone with sun, moon, or rising in the first 3 degrees of Aries will be very impacted by this station and the entire retrograde period through in Aries that lasts through September 1st before it re-enters Pisces. Also, Aquarius rising and Capricorn rising will be very personally affected by this transit, and that is because Saturn is your chart ruler. So any transit that Saturn makes as an Aquarius or Capricorn rising, you are always going to experience that more personally. This may also be true if you are an Aquarius or Capricorn sun in a day chart. And it could also be true if you are an Aquarius or Capricorn moon in a night chart. And so, there's always a lot of variables with astrology, and that's why you should always get a one-on-one reading with an astrologer if you want to know how any transit is really going to personally affect you. I would love to read for you. Everyone should have their chart done at least once in their life with an astrologer, although I think that you should work with an astrologer regularly over time to get the most benefits. But anyway, I digress. But do contact me if you want a reading, because I read on Zoom and I can read for people anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, and you can keep a recording of the reading if you want to. But anyway, I'm going to get back to the translation of Saturn in Aries, because this is a really significant aspect. I mean, Saturn is retrograde 38% of every year. So it's part of the natural ebb and flow of how we work with Saturnian energy as human beings on planet Earth. And Saturn, as I said in the introduction, he is called the great disciplinarian, the great authoritarian, father time, Kronos, arbiter of karma. In our personal charts, Saturn often has to do with where we have the, most significant tests and challenges in our life that we work on overcoming through our life as we become adults and become mature. Normally, we develop a better relationship with Saturn once we turn 44 and beyond than before those years. Because, Saturn teaches us maturity as we're growing up in life. And a lot of times those lessons come hard. Saturn teaches us our boundaries, where there's restrictions, where we need to be disciplined or committed or work hard, So for a lot of people, the Saturn transit, as Saturn stationed, it can have to do with things with your work. But it all depends on which house it's in. And I think I'm going to start structuring my videos so that I go through the rising signs and at least do a blurb of how it might affect each rising sign. And I didn't organize this video quite that way yet, but I'm going to try and off the cuff kind of go through how it's going to affect the signs that it's affecting most personally. But in general, this Saturn retrograde in Aries is saying there was this new start that we're trying to make. This Aries energy, this Aries sector of our chart is someplace where there's a new start that is happening in our lives. Many of us are already working with that new start, and we're aware of what it is because we've now had Saturn in Aries for the past 6 weeks. But Saturn turning retrograde is saying we can't move forward right now as quickly as we want to. We need to maybe rework our foundation a little bit. Maybe we need to reflect on really how we want to move forward when we do move forward. And Saturn is going back towards Pisces, which I want to keep this video really focused on Saturn and Aries, but it kind of does all go together. And so even though I'm going to do a separate Saturn and Pisces video closer to when it's entering Pisces, I want to say that this is related because there's unfinished business in our old life that is dissolving, that is leaving, it is disappearing. There's loose ends to tie up. In some cases, there's parts of ourselves that still need to dissolve. For some people, there's still grieving that needs to be done. There's still healing that needs to be done. There's something going on in the Pisces sector. And again, I'll get into more details about all the ways that might present for people when we get to that. But I'm mentioning it now because Saturn, as he retrogrades in Aries, part of the reason why the new start can't happen now as quickly as we want it to is because of this unfinished business in our old life that needs to be wrapped up. And yes, there's a myriad of ways that can present. If you have early planets in the early signs of Aries or the early degrees of Aries or the late degrees of Pisces, it's going to be very personal to you. This Aries section, though, I'm really going to focus on how it's affecting the cardinal axis. So it's going to be personal to you as well if you have early Libra, Cancer, Capricorn. And basically, we have to reflect on what we really want. And we are getting an opportunity to exercise our patience muscle. Saturn in Aries retrograde for some people is going to have to do with dealing with anger management or even depression, because Saturn in Aries can bring up anger, but it can be constricted anger, and so that can be depression. But for some people, they may be having angry outbursts that are creating problems in their life. There may be feelings of frustration. These are all things people who are experiencing this transit personally can feel. And even if you're not feeling it personally, you may sense it out in the street because it is a collective transit also. So, if you're at the market, at the bank, in traffic, whatever, wherever your public life is. So there is, our patience is being exercised, our conflict resolution skills are being exercised, and we're having to go deal with some unfinished business. Now, I want to talk about some of the aspects, and I want to talk about this relationship between Saturn and Neptune, because as Saturn entered Aries, it's been close to a conjunction with Neptune, the exact conjunction of Neptune and Saturn in Aries at 0 degrees is in February 2026. And so that is the date that we can look at for when this new start we want to make really takes off. But for now, we're having to kind of go back over some things. And this Neptune Aries conjunction is historic, and it makes this Saturn in Aries different than any Saturn in Aries that we've experienced in recent years. And we can't really understand this Saturn in Aries without relating it to the Neptune in Aries. And this summer we are getting foreshadowing of what our new life is starting in February 2026. Over this past 6 weeks, we've gotten foreshadowing. But as of July 12th, things are kind of turning around and going back into the way things used to be a little bit more, or at least tying up the way things used to be. And so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is close this summer. And so we're getting some foreshadowing of where our life is going starting in 2026 and the years beyond. And these planets being in conjunction, the last time they were conjoined was in 1989. It was in a different sign, but it's really world-changing, map-changing historical transit. In 89, Mandela was being released from prison. The World Wide Web was being born. The Berlin Wall came down. There's many other things that were happening, but we were at an era-changing moment. And so we are again now, and for many different reasons, on top of the Neptune-Saturn conjunction, but that alone has such historical map-altering implications. But Neptune has to do with dissolving things, and Saturn has to do with building things. So we are in a period of reformation of the new world, and many of us are building new worlds in our personal lives as well. And so that's what this Saturn and Neptune conjunction is about. Neptune in Aries is inspiration and kind of a connection to source and being able to download this inspiration. And Saturn in Aries is wanting to build the foundation to the new start with care, and not take shortcuts, and not cut corners, and not use cheap materials, and really do it right. And so there is a push-pull. But what I love about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is that it's giving us the ability to bring form to the inspiration, to bring form to the new dream of the new world. But Saturn is urging us to slow down and to build slowly, to not take off, because Aries is very impulsive. Aries is the fastest sign of the zodiac. Aries just wants to go for it. So Saturn is saying, no, we have to proceed with caution. We have to follow the manual. We have to follow the rules. We have to follow the protocol. Here are the boundaries. Here are the restrictions. Here are the permits you need. This is going to take extra time, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And so in some area of our life that's going on, and that's going to be different depending on the house it's in. You know, if it's in your first house, if you're an Aries rising, it could have to do with your body and your health. But if it's, you know, in your second house, it's going to have to do with your finances. If it's in your third house, it might have to do with something going on in your neighborhood, or with your siblings, or with writing that you're doing, or with traveling that you're doing. If it's in your fourth house, it may have to do with your home, or a home that you're building. You know, if it's in your fifth house, it could have to do with your children and something that they're going through, or your relationship with them. If it's in your sixth house, it could have to do with your health. If it's in your seventh house, it could have to do with your marriage. If it's in your eighth house, it could have to do with your spouse's finances. If it's in your ninth house, it can have to do with international travel, or publishing, or broadcasting, or your religion, or your spirituality. If it's in the 10th house, it could have to do with your career, or your status, or your reputation. If it's in the 11th house, it could have to do with your friends, or a group that you belong to, or your business associates, or an organization that you're a part of. If it's in your 12th house, it could have to do with subconscious material that you're dealing with. And so even though a transit has this energy that pervades the entire world and the entire collective, we are all translating it in our lives in different ways depending on our own personal astrology. And that's why I always encourage you to contact me for a reading so that we can look at the transits in your chart. But yeah, this Saturn retrograde in Aries, it's slowing us down. It's a reflective time about how we're going to move forward with work that we're doing in some area of our life, with building that we're doing in some area of our life, with structures and systems in our life. And Saturn for the collective is always going to have to do with the structures, the systems, the governments. It has to do with our, you know, physical structures, the buildings that we live in our body. It's our bones. You know, Saturn is the structures. And so, yeah, you know, patience is a virtue. Another thing that Saturn in Aries can bring up is dealing with authority figures and problems with authority, issues with authority. That can be coming up for people who have planets in the early cardinal signs, in particularly Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn. During this period as Saturn is going retrograde, it may be going back over some issues with authority you've already experienced as Saturn has gone through these first 3 degrees. You know, you may be experiencing limitations, restrictions, boundaries elsewhere. Saturn sometimes represents the elderly people in our life. So it can represent our, you know, a parental figure, an elder, a mentor, you know, a father, a grandfather. Sometimes it's a boss or a landlord. Sometimes it's an institution that we're dealing with. But we, you know, anyone with early degrees, cardinal signs, or Capricorn risings and Aquarius risings might be during the station really feeling, you know, restrictions, limitations, boundaries, a no, a rejection, things coming to a standstill in some situation where you're dealing with an older person or an institution, or, you know, a professor even could be Saturn. You know, it runs the gamut, but I'm just giving you an idea so you can take the ball and run with it, applying it to your own life. But I do want to talk some about the aspects that Saturn is making, because I do think that I talked about who it will affect the most personally. When we're officially making the new start, this, yeah, I said it's going to be the most intense for Aries because it's happening in Aries, but it's also Capricorn risings and Aquarius risings because it's their chart ruler. It's also going to be tough for Libra. If you have early cardinal signs of Libra, it will be oppositional forces for you. And it feels very, with relationships, it feels very relational. It's going to be tough for Cancer and Capricorn. It's a square, so it is going to require action. Capricorn is doubly getting this energy because it's your chart ruler and it's squaring your sign if you have early degrees Capricorn. You know, for some Capricorns, this is going to feel like complete burnout or exhaustion during the days it was stationing. And the day it stations was the 12th, but 5 days before and 5 days after, it's basically at that same degree. And so you could be feeling it in your bodies, dear Aries, Sun, and risings, but also Capricorn, Sun risings in the early degrees. And yeah, the square with Cancer is a little different than the square with Capricorn, but the square with Cancer is going to be feeling it in the early degrees. There may be, you know, tensions that are sensitive, you know, that cause hurt feelings, emotions, yeah. That is what I'll say about that. I could go on and on, but I'm just going to cap it there. There may be an annoyance requiring an adjustment for Aquarius, as well as for Taurus, brought about by Saturn stationing. And so that might just be because there's a situation around you, but it's not really directly affecting you, but it's enough where you need to adjust somehow if you have early degrees Aquarius or Taurus signs. Now, aspects. On July 24th, Saturn retrograde in Aries will form a trine with the Sun, which will have entered Leo by then. This is a very passionate, this is a very fortifying aspect. Even though Saturn is going retrograde, a trine is very favorable, and Aries and Leo are about action and inspiration, and so I think there could be a sense where 7/24, July 24th could be a day where work is really fun. It can be a day of really strong, positive leadership. It can be a day where that highlights, you know, even though we are going kind of backwards and needing to reflect or review or rework or restructure before we move forward in some area of our life. For Leo, this is very positive. And this is what I meant to say. Early degrees Leos and early degrees Sagittarius will also be very personally affected by this transit in the most positive way. It's like this Saturn retrograde in the early degrees of Aries is just the reflection and review and restructuring and reworking moment that Leo and Sagittarius have been praying for. They have been wanting this, and they are going to be able to, this is going to be a very empowering, fortifying retrograde period for those who have early degrees Leo, Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, or Rising. And Leo in particular, this is a really good luck day on the 24th. I mean, yeah, because this trine is highlighting the best of the work. And it's really highlighting, giving a lot of clarity to what needs to be done in this review period in order to be able to have this really exciting new start that you want. And I think it can be a lot of fun on this day as well, even though there may be like work involved. There's a lot of fun and it's very playful. This is also a good day for children and elders relating, or teenagers and elders relating in really positive ways for both parties. And there are a myriad of other ways. I mean, it's a good day at the office for people. It's a good day for work, and it's a strong leadership day. I've repeated myself a bunch of times, so I'm going to keep moving forward. August 1st, Saturn retrograde in Aries squares Venus at 1 degree Cancer. And so this is more of that Aries Cancer dynamic. It feels like Saturn retrograde in Aries is somehow, I don't know, it is, it can be causing friction in romantic relationships on August 1st. It can be, Aries can be very combative and very direct and very blunt and very brash. And Cancer is very sensitive. So when Aries and Cancer are squaring off, and it's Saturn and Venus, it feels like, there's something in a family setting, perhaps, or in a romantic setting where, Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, the woman, the sister, the daughter, the lover, the artist, is being told no, or a boundary is being drawn that is hurting her feelings, or, making her feel insecure or unsafe in some way. So that can be a tough one on relationships. It can be someone being selfish in a relationship that's hurting someone else. That aspect between Venus square Saturn on August 1st. Then on August 8th, Saturn retrograde is squaring. Oh, and the other thing, no, I already said August 1st. Okay, so the other thing I want to say about that August 1st transit is things from the past can be coming up and causing a problem in the relationship, because Saturn is retrograde and Venus is in Cancer. Cancer is always thinking about the past. Cancer is very nostalgic and ruled by the moon and past oriented. So there's a lot there for relationships. It can also affect creative collaborations, and anyone who's Venusian, stylists, designers. Okay, so August 11th, Saturn retrograde in Aries is sextiling Uranus in Gemini. And I love this because Uranus is one of the outer planets. If you've been following my astrology, all of the outer planets have shifted signs recently. That's part of the reason that we're saying this is this new world, very historical time for all the outer planets to be doing, shifting at the same time. They're all traveling at different speeds, all these converging cycles coming to a head and creating this very historical new start for the world and in our personal lives. But what I love about Saturn sextile Uranus is, this is like support from the transpersonal planets for the work that we're doing. And Uranus in Gemini is going to be delivering pleasant surprises that are going to be very helpful to this new start. This is going to be, opportunities that appear out of nowhere, interesting random people that come in out of nowhere and are helpful. And so stay open-minded to dealing with people that you don't normally deal with, going into situations you may not normally go into, because it's opportunity. It's a sextile. It does not land in your lap. You have to co-create, and so you have to be open to it. Uranus and Gemini, you have to be social. You have to network. I know it's not fun. It's not comfortable for a lot of people. Some people are naturals. Another thing that depends on your own personal astrology. But this is the time for it, is really opening your mind to unique people, unique situations, unique opportunities, and unique experiences, because the planets are saying that the people who do that are really going to benefit greatly from this period. And there's people who will let these opportunities go by and not even notice them. And so that is one of the advantages of astrology. You have to recognize the blessing to receive it. So I would really look to where Uranus is in your chart and where Saturn is in your chart to see, because I think this is a great opportunity and it's something unique. And again, very personal to people. This one is personal to anyone who has planets in early degrees of Gemini or Aries or any of the cardinal signs or any of the mutable signs. So the cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. The mutable signs are Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces. So opportunity is there. And for some people who have squares to either Uranus or Saturn, that opportunity may be disguised in a difficult situation, but it's still there. It gets very complex when you get into your own personal astrology. So I definitely encourage you for a reading if you have early degrees of any of these signs that I just talked about. This is one of the most interesting alignments because it's the kind of thing where it can pass you by or you can co-create with it. So, and then I also wanted to talk about August 25th, Venus and Leo trine Saturn retrograde in Aries. Okay, I like this because Venus and Saturn squared off, if you remember, when she was in Cancer, August 1st. So whatever like lover's quarrel might have happened or creative conflict may have happened August 1st, it looks like Venus and Saturn make up by August 25th, and they're in a really good place. So there are rewards for the work that has been done. And, Venus in Cancer square Saturn retrograde in Aries August 1st really signaled where we need to do work, what we need to work on in a relationship, maybe what we need to work on in a creative situation, or with our style or our beauty or our interior design. For some people, maybe justice, for some people around their home, but basically, the conflict or challenge came up that required us action, and with Saturn, it's something that requires either more discipline, more commitment, harder work, for some people, maybe it was a rejection, maybe it was a no, maybe it was a boundary. Whatever that August 1st Venus-Saturn situation is, it looks like by August 25th, it's in a really great place. And Venus and Saturn are in harmony with each other and making some really long-term plans and towards the new start that's going to be happening. So, things do get better by the end of that. And then basically that's where I'm going to stop, because September 1st, Saturn enters Pisces, and I'm going to come back and do another video for that. But thank you so much for joining me. And maybe I'll just do a tarot pull for those who made it out to the end and see what the cards want to say about Saturn retrograde in Aries. They actually might remind me of something that I left out that I meant to say. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link in the description notes to book a reading with me. There's also a link if you want to buy me a coffee or a tea or croissant or thank me. There's a link to my Venmo to make a donation. The link to book a reading is at my site, Eliane-Nicole.com. And the Fool. The Fool is what I pull up for Saturn and Aries. And I love this because the Fool is the first card of the major arcana of the tarot. And it's all about the new start energy. And so, that's what I want to say. Don't get discouraged by the delays, by the no's, by the rejections, by the restrictions, by the boundaries. They're temporary. This is a period we have to go through. It's actually a strengthening and fortifying period. It's going to be more difficult for some people than for others. But nevertheless, oh, I think I left out a major transit. Nevertheless, the new start is going to happen. And the people who stick with it, because the thing about Aries is Aries loves a new start. Aries is very impulsive. Aries loves to be first out the gate. They're always very, very passionate in the beginning, but they burn out easily. They burn out quickly. And I do think that this Saturn retrograde period is burnout for some people who went too hard over these past 6 weeks as Saturn first entered Aries and didn't pace themselves. So for some people, this Saturn retrograde in Aries period is going to be learning to pace yourself when it is time to really start. You know, it can be good that Saturn is bringing in some caution to Aries impulsiveness and Aries urgency, even though it's difficult because we want what we want when we want it. But the Fool energy is saying this new start is on the horizon. You know, it's inevitable. It's happening. And so don't worry about that, as it feels like maybe in some ways you're getting sucked back into your old life, or having to do some things that are part of an old life that you don't want to be a part of anymore, or it's taking longer to set the foundation for the new start than you thought it would. You know, don't get down by the delays, the postponements, the boundaries, the restrictions, the rejections, because the people who withstand it are going to blossom and bloom and flourish once Saturn clears the transit with Neptune. The people who give up, something else will happen, you know, and I will have to look at your astrology to know exactly. But, you know, we have a responsibility to co-create with the energies that are there. The people who give up are going to probably experience some of the harsher expressions of Saturn and Aries, because I think the best use of it is really putting the thorough time, energy, care, work, commitment into properly laying the foundation of what you're trying to build for the new world that we're entering. And so, you know, not trying to take shortcuts, not getting impatient and giving up, and, you know, persevering through even the hard times. And I feel like I didn't even talk about the Mars Saturn opposition. I don't know how I missed that transit. Yes, August 8th, Saturn in Aries is opposing Mars in Libra. That is going to be very difficult for justice. That is going to be very difficult for legal situations. It can be very difficult for relationships. Again, it's going to affect most personally Aries and Libra, people with early degrees, as well as Capricorn and Cancer. This can be experienced as very frustrating. It can bring up anger. It can be a day of just like unbelievably hard work where you are to the grindstone nonstop, having to focus and work with like no breaks, that type of thing. It can be standoffs. It can be, coming into an opposition. It can be a crash, literal or metaphorical, because Aries is moving so fast, and Mars and Aries and Libra and Saturn, they're both in their detriment. So that day is intense. That is the hardest day probably for Saturn retrograde in Aries. So you might want to be aware of that, particularly if you have signs in the early degrees of Aries, Aquarius, Capricorn, Cancer, Libra. Even if you have early, signs and early, any early air signs, Gemini, and then early fire signs, Leo and Sagittarius. The trine is there, but there's still this opposition happening too. So Leo and Sagittarius will get the sextile. Leo and Sagittarius are going to have the best time with this opposition. Leo and Sagittarius are going to benefit from some tough situation or hard situation that happens. So you guys are the luckiest in terms of that opposition that day. But yeah, so that I'm glad that, pulling the Fool card reminded me there was still stuff I wanted to say. And now this has been a 40-minute video. I had no intention of that, but thank you for joining me. Contact me for a reading. I appreciate you. Bye-bye.